I have been driving a taxi on the night shift for the past 7 years. Most drivers prefer working during the day because they don't consider it safe to drive at night. But for me, the night was my livelihood. The darkness, the silence that spread across the roads, the light traffic, and the generous tips. That was my life. On the other hand, things had been tense between my wife Mary and me for several days. The reason wasn't money. The real reason was that I couldn't give her enough time. My son had even topped his entire school, but because of my work schedule, I couldn't attend a single one of his celebrations. That was exactly what started another argument between us.
Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably, but I remained silent. You spend every night taking strangers safely back to their homes, but you never make time for your own family.
Daniel! There was an unusual fear in her voice. For God's sake, don't go tonight. I don't know why, but I've had a terrible feeling all day. I looked at her in confusion. Why? She remained silent for a few moments, as if trying to gather her thoughts. Then, she finally said, I had a very strange dream last night. Please cancel your rides for tonight. I couldn't help but laugh. There you go again with your dreams, I said.
But she completely ignored my reaction. Then she continued, I saw you picking up a man whose face I couldn't see, and there was something terrifying about him. So? That was the dream, Mariam replied quietly. She slowly nodded. I frowned and said, So what if your dream actually comes true? Should I stop going to work because of that? No, there was something terribly wrong about that dream. I gently pulled my arm free from her hand, and without looking back, I walked out of the house. It was around 11 o'clock at night. The rain was pouring heavily outside. The roads were almost deserted. An old song was playing on the radio while the windshield wipers swept the rain off the glass over and over again. An hour passed. I had only picked up 2 passengers. I started thinking that maybe I should just call it a night and head home early. Just then, a ride request popped up on my phone. Location, Raven Hill Cemetery Road. I looked at the map again, because it was located in the part of the city where people didn't like to go, not even during the day, let alone at night. For a moment, I thought about canceling the ride, but then I noticed that surge pricing was active. The fare was almost 4 times higher than usual, so I accepted the request. After driving through the heavy rain for about 15 minutes, I finally reached the location. The place was completely silent. There was an old church there, and directly across from it stood a cemetery. A flickering yellow streetlight stood beside the road, making the entire place look even more unsettling. I slowed the car. There was no one in sight. A few moments passed. Then suddenly, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the driver's side window. I turned my head and saw a tall man standing outside. He was wearing a long black overcoat, along with black leather gloves. In his hand, he carried an old, rusted metal chest. Before I could even process what was happening, he opened the rear door himself, carefully placed the metal chest inside, then walked around the car and got into the front passenger seat without asking for permission. His face was completely covered, so I couldn't see what he looked like. I looked at him and asked, "Where would you like to go?" He remained silent for a few seconds before finally speaking. "Just keep driving," I'll tell you where to stop." His answer caught me off guard, but I didn't argue. I simply put the car back in gear and continued driving. For a while, the radio played normally. Then, without any warning, it shut off by itself. With the radio dead, the inside of the car became eerily silent. The rain had grown even heavier. I had been driving for more than 20 minutes now, yet the man still hadn't told me where he wanted to stop. A little while later, he instructed me to turn onto a narrow road leading into the forest. A wave of uneasiness crept over me. The woods ahead were incredibly dense. I had no idea where this man was taking me. As I was thinking that, suddenly, from inside the metal chest in the back seat, knock, knock. I heard something hitting the inside. The sound sent a chill through my entire body. I looked at the man and asked, "What's inside that chest?" Instead of giving me a straight answer, he avoided the question. Now, I was even more terrified than before. Even so, I somehow managed to keep myself under control. At that moment, I remembered everything my wife had warned me about, the dream I had laughed at. Now, I could clearly hear the voice of an innocent child coming from inside the chest. "Please, get me out of here." I slammed on the brakes and stopped the car. Then I turned to the man and demanded, "What's inside that chest?" The first thought that crossed my mind was, this man had to be a kidnapper. I quickly pulled out my phone to call the police. But because we were deep inside the forest, there wasn't a single signal. My mind went completely blank. I had no idea what to do. Then the man finally spoke. "Listen, don't panic. It's not what you think it is. If you really want to know the truth, then prepare yourself, because what I'm about to tell you is hard to believe." He took a deep breath and began to speak. "It's been 7 months since I moved to this city. I'm a civil engineer by profession. A construction company assigned me to a long-term project here. Since the project was expected to last for quite some time, I moved into a company-provided apartment with my family. My wife loved the apartment. She decorated it with great care and poured her heart into making it feel like home. We also have a 3-year-old son named Ayan. In the beginning, nothing unusual happened. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But as time passed, strange things began happening to us. One day, after finishing work, I returned home from the office. I rang the doorbell, but my wife didn't answer. I kept ringing it for nearly 10 minutes, yet there was still no response. Just as I was wondering what was going on, I heard my son crying continuously from inside the apartment. At that moment, I knew something was terribly wrong. Then I remembered that the spare key to the apartment was in my car. I rushed outside, grabbed the key, and hurried back. The moment I unlocked the door, I saw my wife lying unconscious on the floor. My son was sitting beside her, crying helplessly. I quickly sprinkled water on her face to bring her back to consciousness. As soon as she opened her eyes, she threw her arms around me and burst into tears. She cried, "Daniel, there's something terrifying living in this apartment. For God's sake, we have to leave this place as soon as possible." I looked at her and asked, "What could you have possibly seen? You loved this apartment more than anything. Why do you suddenly want to leave it?" After hearing my question, she finally told me what had happened. She said she had been in the kitchen preparing dinner while Ayan was playing with his toys in his room. A few moments later, she heard the voice of a woman coming from Ayan's room. The sound left her completely confused. I immediately ran into his room to see what was happening. She took a shaky breath before continuing. When I walked inside, I saw a black shadow holding Ayan in its arms. The moment she witnessed that horrifying sight, she began screaming at the top of her lungs.
I was so terrified that I blacked out. She was crying uncontrollably. Trying to comfort her, I said, "Whatever you saw, it was just your imagination. Nothing like that is real." But believe me, deep down, I was terrified too. Then, one night, I suddenly woke up, overwhelmed by thirst. I went to the kitchen to get some water. What I saw there made the ground disappear beneath my feet. A tall shadow was already standing in front of the refrigerator with its door wide open, as if it were searching for something inside. The instant I saw it, I slowly backed away toward my bedroom, then locked the door as quickly as I could. I looked at my wife and son. They were both sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of what had just happened. At that moment, I realized my wife had been telling the truth all along. I decided that the very next morning, I would ask my company manager to transfer us to another apartment. As soon as morning came, I went straight to the office and told my manager everything that had happened. He listened carefully, clearly surprised. Then he said, "Don't worry, I'll arrange another apartment for you." But after that incident, something strange happened almost every single day. I always made a habit of locking the bedroom door from the inside before going to sleep. Yet, in the middle of the night, I would often wake up to find the lock unlocking itself. One day, I finally decided to seek help from someone who understood these kinds of things. That's when someone told me about an old spiritual man. I went to meet him at the address I had been given. When I entered his house, it was almost completely dark. Yet the air was filled with the fragrance of burning incense. A few moments later, the room lit up. I saw an elderly man, around 65 years old, holding a pen and a sheet of paper. Without even looking surprised to see me, he continued writing for a moment before speaking. "I already know why you've come. There is an evil entity attached to your home, and it is after your wife and your son. You must get rid of it before it's too late. I'll tell you what needs to be done, but you'll have to carry it out yourself. Tell me, do you have the courage to do it?" Without hesitation, I nodded. "Bob, my wife and son are all I have in this world. I'll go to any length to protect them. Please, tell me what I need to do." The old man looked at me and said, "I'm going to give you a chest. You must take it far away from this city and throw it into a flowing river deep inside the forest. And one more thing. If you hear the voice of your wife or your child coming from inside the chest, do not try to open it under any circumstances. Otherwise, you alone will be responsible for whatever happens." I replied, "Baba, I want to be free from this nightmare, no matter what it takes. I'm willing to face any danger." The old man nodded. Very well. He placed an old wooden chest in front of him, then quietly began reciting something under his breath. A few moments later, he suddenly fell silent. Almost immediately, voices began coming from inside the chest. Sometimes it was the sound of my little son crying, and other times it was my wife's voice calling out to me. The old man calmly said, "Don't be afraid.
The entity that has been tormenting your family is now trapped inside this chest. You don't have much time. Take it immediately and sink it in the river.
You must complete this task tonight. If you fail to do it before sunrise, that creature will wipe out your entire family. After finishing his story, the engineer folded his hands in front of me and pleaded, "You have a wife and children too. I'm begging you in their name. Please help me. If you don't, none of us will survive." By the time he finished speaking, my eyes had filled with tears. Without wasting another second, I stepped on the accelerator and drove toward the river deep inside the forest. The closer we got, the louder the screams coming from inside the chest became. It sounded as though something trapped inside was desperately trying to escape. A few minutes later, we finally reached the riverbank. The two of us jumped out of the car, pulled the heavy chest from the back seat, and together hurled it into the rushing river. The moment the chest disappeared beneath the water, piercing screams echoed through the forest from every direction. The sound was so horrifying that it made my blood run cold. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything fell silent.
Complete silence. Without saying another word, we immediately got back into the car and left the place. I drove the engineer back to his apartment. I was about to leave when he stopped me. "Please, give me just a minute." He hurried inside the apartment. A moment later, he returned with his wife and little son. The three of them thanked me with tears in their eyes. Then, as a reward, he handed me $20,000. The moment I saw that much money, my own eyes filled with tears. I thanked them from the bottom of my heart, then started driving back home.